Good morning, everyone. Dear guests, dear ambassador, dear vice rector, dear students, dear authors, and our hero of the book we are presenting here today, and we will be talking here today for the next 2 hours. Welcome to Mykolas Romeris University. We will be having a wonderful event on a topic which is very relevant till today. We will see many parallels from the past till today, and I like really to notify that this is the moment when the history is brought home. We are bringing Lithuanian history back home, and this is my pleasure to start the event with the welcome address by Mykolas Romeris University Vice Rector for Research, Professor Eglė Malinauskienė. Please, the floor is yours. Her Excellency Ambassador, dear authors of the books, dear participants of this event, for me it's really a great honor to have the possibility to host this event here at our university, because when getting back to the spring, when the ambassador came to us and together with Danish Cultural Institute presented this project, I thought that wow, how it's tightly related to the history of our university as well, because we were established together with the restoration of the independence of Lithuania 35 years ago, with a mission to embed Western values to our police officers, with just really a very important mission. And these Western values comes from the universal education that only university can provide. So I thought that the topic and the main subject of this book is really related to our university. Another thing is that our university is the biggest university in Lithuania in social sciences. And you know that values comes to the Society for Social Sciences. And social sciences after certain regimes are really very much impacted in a negative way. So the mission, another mission of our university was to create a modern school of thought in law, in psychology, in ethology, in management, in economics and political sciences. And then again, this is really how it relates to this project as well, and how you see the mission of this project also. And also the title, Escaping Stalin, for me it brings a lot of thoughts. First of all, it's of course about people who escaped the regime during the Second World War. Another thing is about the people who stayed and couldn't escape the regime, but they were trying to escape it by staying here in this country. And also it's about current times when no matter that we are independent, we are still trying to escape. And today I would like to wish, when discussing this book with our researchers, with students, with our social partners, to think why we still cannot escape. So, have a wonderful event. Thank you so much, Vice Rector. Really, you touched upon very important issues of why we are still running from some things we were affected during the 50 years of Soviet occupation. We are still running, and let's hope that our partners will help us to run further. So the next speaker to welcome the conference is Her Excellency Ambassador of Denmark, Grete Silesen. So the floor is yours.
For welcoming us here. You mentioned the meetings we have had, and it's been such a pleasure to meet the open arms from the first time I met the rector, and now this example of how we can work together on this topic that you introduced so well. I would like to put the presentation today into a context of what we have been doing the full week, because actually we have had presentations of 2 books going on now for 4 days, and it will be 6 events in total. We have started out with the book that is called Lithuania, Litauen and Danish, Lietuva, it's published in both languages at the same time. And it tells the story of a Danish family that settled here in the interwar period, had a very happy life here, brought the skills of Danish farming to Lithuania that needed it after the regained independence. But with the return of the Soviet regime after the Hitler-Stalin pact, they got a very clear choice. You can become Soviet citizens, or you can leave right now and leave everything behind. And they chose to go back to Denmark, but always carried Lithuania in their heart. And the author of the book was just a kid when all that happened. But through his parents and the story, through the Danes that had been in Lithuania that gathered in Denmark, he had this story to tell. And he managed to go full circle because after the regained independence in 1991, he became the first lecturer of Danish at the Vilnius University. And he actually just wrote the book because he wanted to tell the story to his family so they knew who he was, and actually he only wanted to hand it over to them after his death. But then one of his students at the Vilnius University said, "This is too good," and she convinced him to have it published as a book. And that is a book we have been presenting for a couple of days. Ebbe, unfortunately, returned to Denmark yesterday. He's an old man of 87. And it had been quite an emotional trip for him also, because as you're saying, are we finding ourselves again when we have been uprooted, and who are we? And then we could combine it with this book, Escaping Stalin. And I'm not going to do your job, but just saying here we have another story of the Baltic refugees that were fleeing as the Red Army was approaching again, together with Polish civilians, together with German civilians, and many ended up in Denmark because the German refugee streams were going in that direction anyway. There were boats going and so forth, but they ended up in this big mixture of people seeking a safe haven in Denmark. We cannot boast that we were the best of hosts to everybody, but there was a better situation for the Baltic refugees and for the Germans, because we were also fed up after 5 years of occupation. But that is that story. So why is it important to tell it today? Well, partly because whenever there is a history, it fills out a gap in our studies of the past that are important for our future. And we have found out with the book of Ebbe Flatau that it really fills a gap, because not that much has been written down of interwar Lithuania and the agrarian society. So although it is his personal memory, it's also relevant for Lithuania of today, because every nation, and especially a young nation, tries to figure out what is our history apart from when we were occupied. So it fills out a gap. And then, of course, you can say, all the young people in the audience, why is this relevant for me also? Well, in particular, Escaping Stalin is super relevant again, because we are living in a situation now where we are again facing a threat from a power that only knows how to communicate through exactly the raw power. We see that in Ukraine today, where they are literally fighting for their lives. And as we say in a political context, the fight in Ukraine is a fight for all of us, because they are holding back the next wave that could come. You are very close on the border. We're not quite as close, but the Nordic Baltics are really in this together. And then drawing one more line to the political context, Denmark has the EU presidency this half year, and security is one of the top priorities that we have. And we have to say that Nordic, Baltic, Poland, those that are up here are definitely the ones that understand it the best, have the biggest cooperation with Ukraine, also supporting Moldova. But it is dawning across the board that if we don't stick together in this, then we have a much more complicated situation. So it has brought us even closer together, the Nordic Baltic family, but also in the EU. And we have to fight for our rights and values. That's also what your university was all about. when it was founded, and that is what this book and the other book also are little pieces in the big puzzle in trying to figure out what we did and how we are going forward. So thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to bring Lithuania and Denmark together. Once more, we do it a lot, and this is a very, very meaningful way for us of doing it also. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Excellency Ambassador. I really enjoyed the point about identity and that this topic which we will be talking today is more or less about identity, who we are. And I would like to think about the relationships between Lithuania and other Baltic states and Denmark, as Denmark also being the Baltic state, because we share the same sea, so we share the same values. So hopefully we will cooperate in building the stronger security in our region. So thank you so much again. And before we will start our conversation with the authors of the book and our hero of the book also, I would like to note one important thing. The presentation of this book to Baltic audiences is an initiative of the authors and the Danish Cultural Institute in the Baltic States. We have also a representative here. She will be wrapping up our discussion. Carried out in cooperation with the Danish embassies in Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania, marking Denmark's, as mentioned before, marking Denmark's presidency of the Council of the European Union in 2025. So today, really, we are talking about our region beyond Lithuania. This book and this topic is not only about Lithuania, it's all about us across the Baltic Sea. So I would like now to start the conversation with the authors. We will have approximately 40 minutes, 45, before I will give the floor for Mr. Algirdas Tamašauskas. So before starting again, I would like to introduce you a little bit more broadly. So the first author here we have Thomas Græsbøll Svaneborg. Thomas Græsbøll Svaneborg is a Danish author and journalist, currently working as an investigative journalist at the media outlet Børsen. He is also the co-author of The Other People's Money and The Great Tax Robbery, and he previously worked as a business journalist for the Danish national media outlet DR. In 2014, he received the Publicist Award with Niels Sandoe, as well as the FUG Prize in 2013. So I hope that was all of that correct, yes? Fantastic. And another author, Brian Traantoft Rasmussen. Brian Traantoft Rasmussen is a historian and columnist for the Danish newspaper Kristeligt Dagblad, if I spelled it correctly. He is also affiliated with Copenhagen University, so Copenhagen University, yes, as a program editor and concept developer. Previously, he worked as a curator at the National Museum in Copenhagen, as well as journalist and editor at Aarhus University Press. There, he wrote about culture and international relations, among other subjects. So now you know all about the authors. Let's talk now about the book which they are presenting today. So I will start with the first question. We have not so many of them, 5. You will decide each how much you want to contribute. So just for the audience to be aware that we have some photos. So you will notify us when the photos can start, yes? So the first question is, what inspired you to take up this topic, to tell the story of the Baltic refugees in Denmark, which until now has remained almost unknown? So
I will begin.
Of course.
Yes.
Go ahead.
And first of all, thank you very much for coming here today. We are really grateful. Okay. thank you for coming today. And thank you for having us. We are really grateful for that. In 2022, 3 years ago, my dad was sick of cancer. He was 92 years old, and we visited the farm where he was born, and his little brother, my uncle. And on the way home from that visit, he all of a sudden, very coincidentally, said to me, "Oh, in there on the left, there was a refugee camp when I was a young boy, and there the Lithuanian refugee, Herta, she lived there before she came to our house." And I said, "You have never told me about that before." And said, "Oh, why? I must have done that. I can't understand it." But and then he was very sick, so we didn't talk much about that until a very few days before he died. And I understood that this Herta Reckenberger from Lithuania was the story about her was a story which he actually still cared about, and it was a story which still could upset him. And the story is that Herta came to Denmark in the spring 1945, just a few weeks before the war ended. The war ended in Denmark. And she, after 1 year in Denmark, she came to my grandparents' house, where she was working as helping a sister from my grandmother. And my grandmother was really happy for that. And Herta also got a child, a little son, Peter, when she was working there. And the whole family was very fond of her. But all of a sudden, the Danish authority, they said that Herta, she wasn't a Lithuanian. They decided her to be a German citizen. So she was expelled to Germany, and she had never been to Germany before. And that destiny was very hard for my family to accept. So they actually tried to call Copenhagen, as they wrote in some letters, but they could never find out why she was expelled. And luckily, Herta, when she wrote to my family, she wrote them in German, and my father was the only one who spoke German in the family, so he translated them to my grandmother. And when my grandmother was going to write to Herta, he also translated the letters to Herta. So when he had died, I found many letters from Herta to us and from us to Herta. So that was actually a kind of gold mine seen from a journalistic perspective. So I was very fascinated by this personal story, but it was also only 6 months after the Russian invasion in Ukraine. So there was also this other reason to be interested and to dig into the story, because many people in Denmark at that time said, "Wow, could this possibly happen again? And what will the Danes do if we have refugees from the Baltic countries again?" So that's my perspective.
Thank you so much. I will comment later. Probably Brian now wants to add something, yeah?
Yeah, and then suddenly out of the blue, I was contacted by Thomas, who told me his personal interest and story, and then I was just totally hooked, because I have just a few months before that wrote my master thesis in history about the topic about the Baltic refugees in Denmark. I wrote about the escape, how they arrived to Denmark, how the Danish society and the Danish state perceived and reacted when there was the sudden influx of refugees. And I also wrote about how these Baltic refugees perceived themselves, about their identity, and what happened later on when they were not allowed to stay in Denmark for good. A lot of them, the majority, had to find a new place to call home, so they went to Australia, Argentina, some of them South Africa and the United States. So me and Thomas, we agreed upon that we should write this book together. And for me, it was a mix of personal curiosity and academic ambitions, because before I wrote this master thesis on the topic of history. I wrote another master's degree in global refugee studies. So I have been doing a lot of field research around the world in refugee camps in Lebanon and in Syria. I've talked to migrant communities in the Philippines and Bulgaria and India and a lot of stuff. So for me, it was a combination of combining the past with the present, because I saw so many similarities between being a refugee in 1925 and 1945.
Thank you so much for both of your reflections. And I understand for Thomas, it was really personal, you know, it's and for your dad, it was also for your family, it was personal trigger to start this. And we are glad that, of course, Brian came across as a team member, yes, of this research. I would like to ask a follow-up question for Brian. As you did research on refugees elsewhere, also not only on this topic but also elsewhere, do you see anything different? Like, what is standing out in the Baltic case? Let's say like this.
A lot of things, I would say, actually. Even though there's a lot of similarities, there's always a lot of things that are different as well. As an historian, I wouldn't say that the history is repeating itself. That's simply not possible, because the context is always changing. But so these Lithuanians, there were among 3,000, around 3,000 of them in Denmark, that was caught in May 1945 when the German forces left Denmark. They could not return home because their home was now not Lithuania, it was a Soviet dominion, a territory. So they did not want to go home, because where is home now? Where is home? And the Lithuania you knew, the Lithuania you grew up in, do no longer exist as the unity and the community and the culture you knew, and which formed you and your identity.
So, follow-up, and actually it's very much connected to my second question, that Lithuanians were one of the largest refugees groups, yes, from those 3,000 of the Baltic. So this was the Lithuanians were the largest group. And in what way did the experiences in Denmark stand out? So it's very similar of what I already asked. Which stories were you able to trace? What is the most, fascinating story you traced during your research? Or what is the story behind the book? Maybe it was not in the book even. So share your the most fascinating story within the research.
Oh, first of all, I would like to say that compared to the Estonian and the Latvian refugees, it was more difficult, or the Danish authorities, they made it more difficult for themselves, because there were so many German-speaking Lithuanians. And it was exactly as in the case with the Hertha, the Danish authorities, they couldn't find out whether these Lithuanians from the southern part of Lithuania, they really were Germans, because some of them had moved to Germany, some of them of just Poland, and some of them perhaps were forced there. So the Danish authorities, they thought that because they had been in Germany and they were Germans. So that was a problem which the Estonian and Latvian refugees didn't have. And so in that way, that is the biggest difference in the way the refugees from the three countries were treated. There was also an issue about whether they had been into a uniform or not. But the civilian Lithuanian, it was really difficult for the Danish authorities to find out what they should do with them. That was at least one topic.
And maybe we should add, for the audience who do not know this history, that in Denmark, these refugees, we had approximately 200,000 German refugees, and then in addition, 30 or 35,000 people called displaced persons, allied refugees. They were also called non-German refugees. And because they were treated completely different than the German refugees. So it was extremely important for these people, for their future, for their hope, for the idea about whether they should go, that they were treated like so-called non-German refugees and not like German refugees. The German refugees lived in camps that were guarded. It was barbed wired. They were not allowed to learn Danish. They were not allowed to talk with the Danish people. And
because of the status, yes, because the Germany lost the war, and that was, the different status than the refugees from the occupied countries by Soviets, yeah?
Exactly, yeah. And because of the Yalta Agreement from, as far as I remember, February 1945, the Allies agreed upon that all German citizens and Soviet citizens should be returned home. But what does it mean to be a German citizen, and what does it mean to be a Soviet citizen? So that was the huge problem. But to answer your question, one of the interesting stories, because I think we have a lot of them. One of them is sitting right here next to me. But one of them was another one was Livia Klans-Kovalevsky's, born Kaufmannite. We have.
So maybe
That's not her.
That's not her.
No, that's a picture of the chaos in the refugee camps when they arrived in 1945. Well, we can continue.
Yeah, but you will probably see it further.
That's her mother sitting and smiling in the first row.
Okay. And this is in Denmark also.
Yeah.
This in Denmark.
Behind the sea, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is the front page of our book.
Actually, if you could stop there.
Gladys, please.
Yeah.
Okay, this is Hertha, who was working at my grandparents' farm. And when she came to Denmark, actually, she had a daughter called Helga. Helga was only 2 years old when they arrived here in April 45, and she died very shortly after the arrival because of ernæringsforstyrring, because she had
Malnutrition, yes?
Yeah.
I wanted to address one thing, very interesting and very legal thing you said, Brian, about German and Soviet citizens. So I will make the remark and you will continue. Yeah. So about German and Soviet citizens, what was regarded at that time to be Soviet citizen? So that is really actually legal question, because as Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, they were occupied by Soviet Union, so they should be regarded as Soviet citizens already, because we were in that sphere of Soviet Union under the occupation. But under international law, we were not, because that was occupation. You couldn't just strip the because your country is occupied. So that was the main difference, because Germany, some part was of course controlled by the Soviet Union for some time, but still they had a place where to come back. Yes, for Baltic refugees, there were no place to come back because, as you mentioned before, it was the occupation. And if they have tried to come back, they will be probably severely affected by, imprisonment, torture, or even death. So that was the main probably difference for those refugees who were in those camps, because they were really affected by the, let's say, inconsistencies of international law, let's say like that. So the floor is yours again. On the picture, you wanted to mention something.
Okay, perfect. So this is Livia Klans-Kovalevsky's, born Kaufmannite, and she was one of these Lithuanian refugees who arrived to Denmark with her parents in the spring of 1945. I interviewed her the last time, I think it was in November and December 2022, when I talked with her for 6 or 7 hours in a row. It was extremely intense. It was pretty easy for me to see that she had so much she wanted to tell me, but it was a total chaos for her in her head how to tell this story. So I was not allowed to interview her. I was not allowed to record the conversation because, as she said to me, I'm not able to speak about this story from A to B. It will be A, B, C, D, Z, something. It was just a totally mess. But she was extremely well prepared for my visit. When I visited her, her whole kitchen was full of things that she had kept in a basement from her time in Denmark as a refugee. There was picture all over the place. There were books that her later Latvian husband had written about this topic as well.
So if you ask me, that looked like a researcher El Dorado, you know, like a jackpot.
It was, yeah.
Like
it was like heaven
for researcher. It's like a heaven for academic research.
Yeah, especially because he was so open and she would speak about everything. But she spent, like Algirdas, a lot of time in the Danish refugee camp system, and she was one of them who remember the times in Denmark as a pretty good time. She is an extremely optimistic person, I would say, and a faithful believer as well. And other refugees we have talked to says that there is maybe a connection there. She speaks about the time in Denmark with passion and joy. She remembers the time in the Danish refugee camp system as a time of, and she was only 9-10 years old, so she was just a child when they had to escape. She remembered the time as a time which was full of play and joy. She went to school with her schoolmates in the camp system, because there was a lot of teachers who were among these refugees as well, and they were really good at establishing some kind of school system from almost day one. So children like Livia could learn the Lithuanian language, how to spell right, how to pronounce it right, and she learned as well about the culture, the singing culture, playing music, playing theater, and Livia and her family became some kind of I would say, cultural center point to a certain degree, because her father was really, really good at building instruments, guitars and violins and music. He was extremely good at building these instruments, and these instruments were used in the Danish camp system all over Denmark, so they could more or less hear the sounds that they were used to hearing back home when they were dancing and playing theater.
This sounds really fascinating, because really what you're talking about is the memory transition. Like, you know, within the camp, which is somewhere outside Lithuania, somewhere very far away, still the Baltic region, but very far away, and you are able, you know, to not homeschool, but you are able to organize yourself to do the schooling within your national group. That's very important for the memory transition, because as you told, really they were able, to enhance themselves and to find the role of their own identity in that refugee camp. So I will be moving to the next question, if you allow me. So how were the Baltic refugees received by Danish society at that time? Have you touched this point? And what did it mean to live between warmth and hospitality, and maybe also between suspicion and mistrust? Because really, you are always afraid what you don't know. So this question is also, again, for you. Thomas?
I can start. First of all, it was from the beginning, it was very clear that from the Danish state that these refugees, they could stay in Denmark, but they could only stay in Denmark for a short period. Denmark had been into a war. We had some unemployment. We had some social problems, not so big as in the other Western countries, but we had some problems. But and then we decided that the Baltic refugees, they were treated much better than the German refugees, but it was clear that they had to leave. And then the big issue was where to. It was, for some, it was an issue. Why can't they go home where they came from? And in that question, the British were very clear and saying that this is absolutely not an issue. And then the Danish government said, so what are we going to do with them then? And can we leave them to you, or can we send them to other countries? And that's an issue which Brian actually had been digging very much into. Sure.
And before continuing, I should maybe clarify that not all refugees remember the time in the Danish camp system as good as Livia. Just to make it clearly, she is and she's still alive and kicking, and she's an extremely positive person. One of her friends, Anita Bertins, a Latvian as far as I remember, remembers the time in the Danish refugee camp system as a time full of alcoholism, of mistrust, and a time, she was a child as well, smaller, she's a bit younger than Livia, as a time when suicide it was not common, but it happened once in a while. And it was extremely frightening for a small child like her. So, just to clarify. But about these Baltic refugees in Denmark who could not stay in the Danish society because they were only to a certain degree allowed. They should be treated humanely while they were in Denmark, but they could not stay permanently. So the Danish state, together with the International Refugee Organization, a new organ under the UN, made from the time 1947 to 1953 a lot of agreements with countries like Argentina, Australia, the United States about how they could take the young, the healthy, and the persons that could be good manual workers in the agricultural sector, in the industrial sectors, all the place where there was a lack of skilled workers actually. And from the time of 1947 and until 1953, that was a huge success seen from the Danish state's perspective, because a lot of these refugees went abroad. They had to, because they were too afraid to stay in Denmark. Would the Danish state suddenly change its position and be more... would they do like the Soviet Union tried to press them to do all the time? Change their perception of what it means to be a refugee and what it means to be a Soviet citizen. So a lot of these refugees ended up on the other side of the world, had to start all over again. And one of Livia Klanz-Kovalevsky's good friends, Danute, is still alive and kicking. We are hearing from Dixie. And she is also 90 years old and she lived in Venezuela.
So thank you so much for this, for sharing this angle of the story, because I think, it happens all the time that when we are affected by a major crisis, we are always, trying to protect ourselves first, yes? And then it's a natural thing that if you have too many refugees, then it's another, a threat on a governmental level. But I would also like to note some parallels with today, because I already heard your personal story, because you heard about that refugee stories only in 2022, when the war in Ukraine began, the full-scale war, I mean. So this is already making many, many parallels what we are facing right now in Europe. And I would like to ask, what are the parallels you see yourself between past and present, and what are the experiences that can be completely transferable from the post-war in 20th century to this situation we have right now? Because now we have like more than 3 years of war. We had huge influx of Ukrainian refugees across the Europe. In Lithuania, we have had a little bit different situation, because we had a refugee influx a little bit before Belarusian refugees because of the stolen elections in Belarus in 2020. So it's also for us important to understand what are the parallels between past and present. Please go ahead.
I think that there is a lot of similarities, not only with the situation right now in Ukraine. When I made this field research in Lebanon, in Shabashatila, and the refugee camp that has existed since 1948 or 49, I think, where there lives a lot of Palestinian refugees, I was talking with them about what does it mean to be a Palestinian refugee today? What about your identity? And a lot of these people, they are third or fourth generation, said that they were ready now, after 70 years of fighting for getting their own country, going home, as they said. They were ready to give up their identity as a Palestinian if they could just get an education, get a citizenship, have some kind of future. And that was, I think that was pretty tough to hear. And I think that identity question is always the case when we're talking about people who are refugees. displaced persons in some kind of way. And we see so many displaced persons right now, both internally displaced persons and people who flee war, hunger, the climate changing. So I think there is a lot of things we can learn from the history. What are the refugee experiences when you are on the run, when you have to flee your home country, when you have to flee your families, the people you knew, the society you knew, the language, the food, culture, everything, and leave it all behind, not knowing when you would be able to return home again?
Yeah, perhaps I can add this. In 46, 7, and 8, and 9, you can say that the Danish solidarity with the Baltic refugees perhaps weren't big. That changed in 1990 and 91, and suddenly, as of today, it has really changed towards the solidarity. And today we have 50,000 Ukrainian people living in Denmark, even though that they are not real refugees, but they are allowed to stay in Denmark because of solidarity with that situation. So it has been very interesting to see this development in the view, in the Danish view on Eastern Europe and people from Eastern Europe. Yeah.
Well, I completely agree, because Denmark is really one of the biggest supporters of Ukrainian fighters, let's say like this, of Ukrainian statehood and identity. So really, when I was myself a little bit involved with Copenhagen University, and I worked with Danish co-workers, so they were really always, trying to understand what we are all about, what is our identity as Lithuanians, as Estonians, as Latvians, and we found really very much a lot of things in common. And the main thing what was in common was that we are small states, small Baltic states. Denmark probably is the biggest. I think the population is of 5 million or so, 6 already. So really small but strong states, which really are trying to cooperate in trying to preserve their own also identity and their own statehood. And this can be very difficult, and this can be very challenging. So what we are facing right now in our region. So we talked a little bit about cultural preservation, about how culture and memories and identity helps to preserve your essence. I would like also to ask, do you see that those people who managed to stay, not to be, not going further for Australia or Argentina, who managed to stay in Denmark, have you seen these stories? What are the stories after that when they stayed in Denmark? Because we have success story here right now sitting with us, and we will talk with him very shortly. But any other stories you want to share with the audience?
The people who stayed in Denmark had in common that they were perhaps very young children. They were sick. They were not allowed to go to, for example, England to work because they were suffering from tuberculosis, or perhaps they were very old. So some of the young refugees went to college and got nice educations, and they lived happily in Denmark, and some of them are still living there. Especially some of the Estonian refugees managed to get a nice intellectual career in Denmark, actually.
Yeah, I just said you. Yeah, and I think one thing that is common as well for some of these young people were that they were maybe actually old enough to make it to the United States or to Canada, Argentina, but their parents were still living with them in the Danish refugee camp system. The last camp closed in 1953, but around 100 of them continued in some kind of
Elderly home.
elderly home. The Danish state established an elderly home for around 100 of these old refugees that were not able to be a part of the international workforce, so to speak. I think it was. They were 5 or 6 different nationalities collected in this small home. It was a former refugee camp, just changed into this elderly home. And there was sitting early former professors and ministers and high, well-educated people and farm workers as well, who were just old and ill. But the problem was, like it is today as well, what do you do when your parents are old, or you have a disabled little sister or something? You cannot just leave them behind. Yeah. And the problem for some of these old refugees as well were that they were not able to speak the Danish language. They were not officially denied to learn the language, but there was no official language program for these refugees. So they only learned the language, or part. I would say that all of them learned the Danish language when they became a part of the Danish community, when they played sports with Danes, when they became a part of the Danish workforce as well. And these elder people did not do that. So a lot of them was just sitting behind in Denmark and were not able to speak the language. What was their future? So young people like a guy called Mykolas, he's 95 today. He's from Latvia. We spoke to him as well, and he said that he had several times thought about starting a career in New Zealand or in Australia or in the United States, but he could not get himself to just leave his old parents behind.
Yeah, so of course, for elderly people, it's a huge challenge to leave everything behind, to go to another country and to stay there. That's completely, I think, natural circumstances, and it takes a lot of efforts if you want really at the elderly stage to integrate yourself in some kind of another community. But probably now it's a good time already to move to our hero of the book, because why I call you hero of the book, Mr. Algirdas, because you are the person who really knows the story personally, not from the book, not from any book. So you are the book. You are the book yourself, with your memories, with your reflections. And really, I would like to invite all the audience to reflect on what you already heard from the authors and try to figure out the question you want to ask after we will talk with Mr. Algirdas. And Mr. Algirdas Tamašauskas, he will be talking in Lithuanian, actually. And we will have a very nice help of our translator, Græsbøll Petrikaitė. So she will be translating for the international audience we have here who are not able to speak in Lithuania yet. And I'm really happy to introduce you as the person who is most likely one of the survivors of that story, of the refugee story, escaping from Stalin. I know that there are more people who are still alive and kicking, as Brian said, yes. Danute, yes, I remember the name Danute, and another one person you mentioned. So, but there are less and less people. We should understand that these people are treasure now of memories of the real story to be talking about, and not only to know the facts, not only from the books. So, Mr. Algirdas, Pone Algirdai, perduodu jums žodį. Žinau, kad esat pasiruošęs, tai Gražvyda irgi stengsis kuo tiksliau išversti ir laukiam jūsų istoriją.
I won't explain why I talk in Lithuanian, because I'm first time invited here. I think it was crazy. I should go to Lithuania, to Vilnius, and talk to the Lithuanian people in language, in the English language. So I prepared my speak in Lithuanian. I have lived 80 years in Denmark, but I didn't forget the language, Lithuanian. I make sometimes some failure and some mistakes, but I hope you will forgive me if I take. So I will try now to speak in Lithuanian in the present time. Labą dieną. Aš pradėsiu dabar mano istoriją. Tenai prasidėjau 44 metais. Aš buvau 4,5 metų ir pabaigoj vasaros, pradžioj rudeniu, frontas priėjo prie mūsų vietos rajono. Aš esu iš Marijampolės, ten mano mama turėjo ūkį prie Marijampolės, Balsupių kaime. Ir tada mano mama turėjo sukinkį 2 arklius, vežimėlį ir taip kaip matosi ant tų amerikoniškų filmų, kurie tie naujarugiai važiavo. Taip ir krovė su patalynė, su drabužim, su kad vokiečiai sakė, kad jie dabar taktiško vietos, jie, kaip sakant, pasitraukia ir paskui vėl grįžti atgal, už 3 mėnesių galėsime grįžti atgal. Tai manėme, kad čia tik tarpas bus tam.
So, hello once again. I will start by telling my story, which dating back to 1944, at the time when I was 4.5 years old. And the story started at the end of the summer and at the beginning of the autumn, when the front line emerged in the place, in the city, and specifically in the village that I lived with my family, which was in Marijampolė district, Baltupiai village. I must intervene because really our university is in the Baltupiai district here, because around Vilnius there were many small places and small villages, because Vilnius was expanding very fast for the past 50, probably 60 years. So the place we are here is also called Baltupiai. So this is the same place where Algirdas is from. I mean, the name of it. So I will continue what Mr. Algirdas said. So at that time, when the front line emerged in his native Baltupiai village in Marijampolė district, he said that his mother harnessed a couple of horses, put all the things into the carriage for them so that they can carry the bed sheets and all the other necessary items that were required for them to withdraw from that place. And the Germans at that time thought and said that it's a tactical withdrawal and that they would be getting back in 3 months, and then they can return and continue with the activities that they initially had planned.
Mes į vežimą sulipome aš, mano mama ir mano teta. Mano tėtei jis nevažiavo sykiu, už tai jį tuo momentu vokiečiai ieškojo vyrus, kurie padėtų tenai kariuomeniai, kokių pagelbinių darbų arba kasti tvirtovių ir taip toliau. Tai jis su dviračiu naktim mus sekė, dienos metu įslapstyti. Ir tokiu būdu mūsų frontas stūmė, net 3 mėnesius, bet praėjo 1, 2 ir daugiau mėnesių tenai, ir mes po truputį toliau ir išvažiavom iš Lietuvos ir per Prūsiją pavažiavom ir siekėme Danzigo, Vokietijos mieste.
So on the carriage we got, it was me, my mom and my aunt, and my dad did not get onto the carriage to withdraw, as at that time it was very important for the Germans, and the Germans were looking for men so that they can assist them with a lot of hard work that needed to be done to build fortresses and so on. But an interesting fact is that my dad was following our carriage by night so that he protects us a little bit. And during the daytime, he was hiding so that they are not aware that the Germans are not aware that he was helping the family. It took them around 3 months, 1
to 2 months, up to 3 months when the front line was pushing them out of Lithuania, and eventually they managed to leave the country. And they traveled through Prussia, and eventually they reached Danzig in Germany.
Mes Danzigą, kai privažiavom, tai frontas beveik mums pavijo, tai kareiviai mus perstumė vienoj pusėj frontos pusėj, o mano tėtė liko anoj pusėj tenai. Ir tai buvo balandžio mėnesių 45 metais tas. Tai mes privažiavom prie uosto, gavom, nežinau kaip, bet gavom mano mama leidimą tenai užlipti ant laivo, kuris turėjo plaukti į Daniją, į Copenhagen.
So during that time, the front line was following us, and eventually it nearly reached the place. The soldiers were pushing us on both sides, and in April 1945, we were on two different sides of the front line, us, the family, and my dad. I don't know how, but my mother, when we got to the harbor in Danzig, she managed to somehow get a permit, and we got on board in a ship which was traveling to Denmark. And that's how we got to Denmark at that time.
Aš atsimenu, kad mes lipom ant trevės aukštyn į laivą, tai aš mačiau, kad kas nors užlipo ant mūsų vežimo ir nuvažiavo. Tai aš mano mamai dar šaukiau, kad vagia mūsų vežimą kas nors tenai. Bet mano mama nereagavo ant tų dalykų ir mes po, galim sakyti, mėnesio laiko atplaukėm į Copenhagen, su vykla, tenai ir buvo pradžioj gegužės mėnesių 45 metais atsiradome Copenhagen. Ir iš laivo mus išlipti į Danų vyriausybę į sportų salę, kur buvo uždėtas čiužinių ant grindų, tenai vadinosi Copenhagen daniškai. Tenai buvome nelabai ilgai. Mano tėtė, jis grįžo su dviračiu į Lietuvą.
So we got higher onto the ship, and as we were going up the ship, we saw the carriage moving away. I understood that it was being stolen, and they shouted to my mother that somebody's stealing our carriage, but my mother did not react. And we got to Copenhagen 1 month later, which was the start of May 1945. As we arrived by the ship to Copenhagen, the Danish government met us there, and they took us to a sport hall, Copenhagen, was it called? And that's how the story continued in Denmark. And my father stayed in Lithuania.
Tos Copenhagen ilgai buvo, mus tada išvežiojo po Jutlandą, vieno tenai lagerį, kitur lagerį, bet aš daugiausia atsimenu vieną lagerį Jutlande, vadinasi Numindika. Aš dėl to atsimenu tą lagerį specialiai už tai, kad tenai man atsitiko nelaimė. Ten vaiką aš buvau tada, kaip sakant, 6 metų, tumsyk arba 5, tenai pabaigoj. Tai vaikai žaidė ir jie šaudėsi su akmenikiam mėtais, su tom, kaip čia vadinasi, radatkėm, tenai ir man pataikė į akį. Ir tada man, žinoma, man surišau, sutvarkė, bet buvo uždengta akis.
So for some time we were traveling from one lager to another as we got to Denmark. But I remember one lager in Jutland, because I was a child at that time. No, sorry, it was in Mumindigap, because it was the place where an accident happened to me as a child. I was at that time 5 or 6 years old. I got injured by the children who were shooting I'm actually not certain how to translate it into English. Sorry? Yeah, a sling. I don't know actually. A sling. So the children were using it to shoot each other, and accidentally they shot into my eye. So I got injured, and they had to get some assistance, obviously.
Tuo metu mano mama susirgo tenai tuberkulozu tenai. Tai ją išvežė iš Jutlandos, išvežė į Seelandą, rytų Seelande, tenai buvo, o mane išvežė prie Kopenhagos, yra, kur buvo tokie apsaugomi biski namai, kur buvo sužeisti Lenkų kareiviai, tenai, kur akli buvo ar be kojų, tenai. O aš tai buvau vienintelis vaikas, buvo tada, kaip sakant, 6 metų, tenai aš nemokėjau lenkiškai, aš nemokėjau daniškai, tai biski tuo laiku metus, kur aš buvau, tai buvo biski sunkus.
At that time, my mother got sick. She had tuberculosis. And at that time, we were taken from Jutland to Eastern Zealand, where my mother was supposed to receive some kind of help. And I was the only child in that place at the age of 6. I couldn't speak any Polish nor Danish, so those were really more difficult times for me.
Kai buvau ten Skotsborge, kur tas vadinosi, tas mažas stovykloje buvo, tai aš nuvežė mane į ligoninę, Kopenhagoje, Rigshospitalet, tai yra didžiausia ligoninė, jie dabartiniu laiku. Akių skyriui jie pasižiūrėjo į mano akį, bet nieko negalėjau daryti. Aš vėliau sužinojau, kadangi mano akis buvo uždengta labai ilgai ir pasidarė tokį plyvelį ant akies, o jeigu akis negauna šviesos ilgesnę laiką, tada nervai tie, kurie žiūri, numiršta tenai. Ir aš tuomsyk tik galėjau matyti šviesą, tamsų ir palikau ant kairės akies aklas ligi šiol dienos.
So at that time at Skotsborg camp, I was taken to hospital in Copenhagen so that the doctors can inspect my eye. And they inspected and saw what was happening with it. It was difficult for them at that time because my eye had been covered for some time. And when you cover an eye and it is in darkness for some time and receives no light, the nerves die. As a result of which I am blind with the left eye until the current day.
Po metų laiko mane išvežė į lagerį Tistete, tai yra Jutlande. Tenai gana didelis stovykla buvo, tenai daug lietuvių buvo, tik barakose šiek tiek ir Lenkų, tenai buvo, bet daugiausia buvo lietuvių. Tenai čia mano tas ponas minėjo tą lagerį Ausbek. Ten galima buvau 4-5 metų gyvenome toj vietoj. Žinoma, tas lageris buvo aptvertas su spygliuota vielom tenai aplinkui. Tenai nebuvo taip, kaip gal čia tie ponai pasakojo, kad mums galima buvo išeiti, kaip norėjome. Jeigu neturėjo kokį specialį leidimą, tai išeiti iš stovyklos neleido, buvo vartai, be jokių leidimų neišėjo. Tai dėl to mes galima skaitų stovyklėm buvom kaip pasaulis savo, neturėjom ryšių su danais išvis. Mano laikas ten stovykloj, sakyčiau, buvo gera. Aš kaip vaikas matau tik tą pasaulį, kur aš esu. Ten daug vaikų buvo, ten lietuviškų mokykla buvo, tenai galima sakyti man nieko aš, o pasaulį už to negeriau, nežinojau net ką. Tai galima sakyti, tenai aš negaliu sakyti, kad man blogas laikas, kai vaikui, tai tenai buvo gana smagu, buvo tas lageris prie jūros, tai vasarą galėjom maudytis.
So we spent a year in Jutland, in the Sistet place, which the authors mentioned. That was a large lager, a large camp with a lot of Lithuanians, a lot of Polish people. And we spent quite a lot of time there. But contrary to what the authors have said, that we could travel and leave the lager easily, I couldn't say that, because there were wire fences all around, and if you didn't have a permit, you could not exit the territory of the lager. There was a gate. But as a child, I should say that I was still quite happy, because even though we didn't get in contact with a lot of Danish people there, as we lived in a closed territory, still I can say that I had a relatively good time. As a child, I remember that there was a sea, and we could, to some degree, enjoy some of the things. But I didn't know what was happening behind those wire fences, and I didn't have much contact with the outside world.
Kaip vaikas, tada tai kiti vaikai taip pat buvo tos pačios sąlygos, skirtumų nebuvo, tai tenai galima sakyti, man bėdų nebuvo dėl to. Prie lagerų buvo tokia maža sanatorija, ligoninė, bet atskirai, tai aš lagerį tam Tistete iš pradžios gyvenau sykiu su mano teta, tenai buvome, tai atkėlė mano mamą į tą ligoninę, tenai, kur buvo sirgo tuberkuliozu, bet pagal jūrą aš galėjau nueiti į tą ligoninę, į tada po mokyklos, aš beveik kiekvieną dieną galėjau nueiti pas mano mamą.
So as a child, I mainly lived under the same conditions as other children in the same place. I would also like to say that there was some kind of a hospital resort place for those who needed some medical treatment. My mother was staying there because of her tuberculosis, and she was also visited by my aunt. And after school, I could also walk along the sea, and could go to the hospital to visit my mother.
Tenai tam lagerį, tenai buvo visokių įrengimų, tenai salė buvo, kur galima sakyti, buvo kaip ir visas valstybė vienoj vietoj tenai. Tenai atvažiuodavo delegacijos iš Amerikos, iš Australijos, iš Kanados, kur agindavo tuos pabėgėlius, kur tenai buvo, kad vyktų į tas valstybės tenai. Mes turėjome išvykti į Ameriką, tenai buvo, bet kadangi mano mama turėjo tuberkuliozę, tada galima sakyti, buvo Amerika uždraudė, neįsileido. Tai mes likome Danijoje, už tai, kai išvažiuoti į Ameriką neėjo.
In that place, in that camp, there was a hall, and it was there was the infrastructure needed, and it was functioning as a state. And in that place, in the camp, we were receiving delegations. We were visited by the delegations from the United States, Canada, and from some other countries. And they were inviting the refugees to move to their countries. And we were considering moving to the United States, as we were invited to go there. But because of the illness that my mother had, the tuberculosis, we were banned from entering the country, so we didn't even leave.
Tenai net ir atvyko sovietų delegacija, kuri ragino lietuvius grįžti, ir porą pabėgėlių sutiko grįžti į Lietuvą, ir jie sakė, kai jie parašys mums žinias, kaip gal atsivyks į Lietuvą, bet niekad jokių žinių negavome, kaip jie išvyko tenai. Tam lagerį, kaip sakant, pradžioj per 50 metų, tai sumažėjo gana daug išvyko į tas įvairias valstybės. Mano teta, kuris per Raudoną kryžių susižinojo savo sūnus, kuris buvo išbėgęs į Vokietiją. Jis iš Vokietijos emigravo į Australiją ir mano teta išvyko iš Danijos pagal su savo sūnų į Australiją.
There was even a Soviet delegation who arrived there also and who were inviting the refugees to return back to their countries. And some people even agreed to their proposal. A couple of the refugees returned back to Lithuania, and they promised us to send us some news how they were doing, but we never received any news, and we didn't know what happened to them afterwards. During the period, the long period of 50 years.
No, 4 years.
Of the 4 years, yeah, I'm sorry. A lot of people actually left the camp, and they left to the countries where they were invited. And for example, my aunt, who managed to look for information through the Red Cross, found out that her son, who was in Germany, had left for Australia, and she also then decided to travel from Denmark to Australia, where her son was living.
Pradžioj 50 metų ir pabaigoje 49 labai mažai žmonių jau buvo ten lagery. Tai tą patnaikino ir tuos likučius, kur buvo, ir aš su savo mama mus perkėlė į Kopenhagą į Pragsbulvatą. Pragsbulvatas buvo atviras lageris, tenai žmonės galėjo neaptvertas, galėjo eiti, kad norėjo, galėjo ieškoti darbą tuom sykiu, ir Danai tuos likučius pabėgėlius beveik jau nutarė, kad galima likti Danijoje tenai. Pragsbulvate nebuvo nei jokios mokyklos, už tai mažai vaikų buvo, tai mus nusiuntė į vokiečių mokyklą vidury Kopenhagą, vadinasi St. Petri skole.
At the end of 1949, the beginning of 1950, there were few people left in the lager, and therefore the Danish government sent us to the Pragsbulvat, which was an open camp, and it was the situation was much easier. In that place, we could already seek employment. The grown-ups could seek employment. And the Danish government, as there were already few refugees left, they already allowed us to stay in Denmark. But the place where we were living, there was no school to be educated in the Danish language. So I went personally to a German school, to St. Patrick's School.
Yes. Aš tą laiką, kur buvom Pragsbulvate, mano mama vėl susirgo, tai ją išvežė vėl į sanatoriją, o mane nuvežė į Nykøbing Falster, tai yra pietų Danijoje. Tenai buvo, kaip sakant, mokykla ir gyvenimo vieta, kur katalikų vienuoliais tvarkyta. Tenai buvo maždaug 20 berniukų ir tiek pat maždaug mergaičių, ir tenai aš išbuvau visus metus.
So at that time, my mother got sick in Pragsbulvat. So again, she was again taken to the hospital, and I was taken to New Kemsfars School, which was a Catholic school attended by 20 boys and 20 girls, and this was the school where I spent a year.
Tenai aš išbuvau, kaip sakant, metus laiko, tada mano mama vėl pasveiko ir mes grįžome į Pragsbulvatą. Bet tuom syk tenai iš Pragsbulvatą ir mėgino naikinti, ieškodavau pigių būtų, ar ten žmonėm, kad galėtų išsikraustyti iš to lagerio. Tai mus neužilgo tenai iškraustai prie Kopenhagos, skrytys vadinasi Valpiui, kur buvo tokie mediniai namai 2 aukštų, mes gavome butą 2 kambarių, kur apšildymas buvo pečių vienam kambarį, o tenai buvo 2 kambariai, virtuvė ir tualetė. Tai kitas dalis būtų neapšildomas.
So we spent a year like this, and after that year my mother recovered from the illness, and we returned back to Prague's boulevard. At that time, we started looking intensively, as the government already wanted to close that place. We started looking for a cheap apartment, and we got access to an apartment in Valby, which is in the neighborhood on Copenhagen. These were small 2-story wooden houses with 2 rooms and limited heating. So this was the place where we were staying after that.
Ten tam rajone ir tuose namuose tenai gyveno senukai arba kiti žmonės, kurie socialinį pašalpą gavo už tai, kad susirgę buvo, arba darbuotojai yra. Tai skirtumas tarp tų žmonių, kur šalia gyveno, ir mūsų nebuvo didelis tenai. Kitaip buvo visai žinoma St. Petri skolė, tenai mokykloje, tenai buvo vokiečių mokykla, o dėl ko aš ten mane nurodė, už tai, kad tenai dėstė tarpais vokiško kalba. Tai bet to mokyklų buvo privati, tenai eidavo diplomatų vaikai, direktorių vaikai, kur vokiškų dukterinių įmonių, kur būdavo Kopenhage. Tai su tais tenai vaikais aš kontaktų taip ir neturėjau. Bet ten, kur aš gyvenau, tai aš turėjau kontaktų su tais kitais vaikais, kurie tam rajone buvo. Ir tas, galima sakyti, normaliai vyko.
The place where we were living was the place where mostly old people, elderly people were living. It was the neighborhood where a lot of people who were receiving social benefits were living. So more or less we were in a similar situation, so it was okay. But the situation was different at the school that I was attending, at St. Petrian School. As it was, the instruction was in the German language. It was a private school. It was a good private school attended by the children of the diplomats, CEOs, and entrepreneurs. And with those children in the school, I had limited contact or even no contact. But the situation with contacting and communicating with the children was different in the neighborhood where I was living. We had some contact with the children there, as we were more or less in a similar situation.
Kaip aš buvau Valpiui, tai tenai buvo ir krautuvininkų, tai jie ieškodavo jaunimo tenai, kai buvo 12 metų, kur išvežiauti prekės. Tenai tai turėjau susirinkti savo kišenpinigių. Tai iš vis galima sakyti, jeigu aš atgal žiūrau, tai mano būtina tenai lageriuose toliau nebuvo tokia prasta pagal mano asmeniško tenai išaiškinti. Žinoma, mano mama tai visai kitaip tą laiką.
In Valby, where we were living at that time, there were some groceries that were looking for children like ourselves, adolescents of 11 or 12 years old. We were seeking some kind of employment, and we could get some work there and get some pocket money that we could use. So it was not that complicated for us as young children who were being educated in that place to seek some part-time employment. But the situation for my mother, for example, was different.
Mano mama valdė didesnį ūkį Baltų kaime tenai ir ji buvo gerai išlavinta tenai, jos broliai ėjo po universitetą tenai lakstyti, o mano tėtė buvo civilinis inžinierius, jis turėjo įstaigą Marijampolėje tenai, ir mano tėtuko brolis buvo Lietuvos ambasadorius Londone. Tai mano mama iš visai kitos, galima sakyti, aplinkos atliko į Daniją, ji negerai nemokėjo daniškai kalbėti, tai jai teko dirbti fabrike. Tai ji, galima sakyti, jautė, jeigu Lietuva būtų laisva, tai ji būtų kitą dieną sudėjus savo čemodaną ir grįžus į Lietuvą.
So my mother was working on a farm. In general, I come from a family who were well educated. Her two brothers were also well educated. They were university graduates. And my dad, back in Marijampolė in Lithuania, was a civil engineer. My dad's brother was Lithuania's ambassador to which country? In London, in England. So we came from successful, so to say, background. But as my mother knew and could speak no Danish, she was forced to work in a factory. And she felt that was not very fair in her situation, because had her country not been occupied, she would have returned to her country and to have an easier life.
Aš 57 metais iš 9 klasės išėjau iš St. Petrio mokyklą, paskui stojau į gimnaziją. Iš 60 metais aš gavau studentų egzaminų ir vėliau, aš galima sakyti, studijavau, sužinojau, kad audito išsilavinimas ėjo pagal tuomsyk reikėjo ekonomiškos ir apskaitos universitete gauti išlaikyti masterio, galima sakyti, planą ir vėliau dar 3-4 metus audito dar studijuoti ir 71 metais aš išlaikiau egzaminų ant audito tenai ir tuomsyk pradėjau dirbti audite kaip licencijuotas auditas. Po porą metų aš įsikūriau savo pačią įmonę Danijoje audito.
So in 1957, I left the school after the 9th grade to enter a gymnasium. In 1960, I had an exam, and I decided to start the studies of audit, as I thought that I should start working in economics, in accounting. So I took a master's plan, and in 3-4 years I completed this. In 1971, I passed my exam, became a certified auditor, and in 2 years I started an audit company.
Čionai, kaip galima sakyti, aš savo įmonę atidariau, tai man galima sakyti, kad gerai sekėsi tolimesnį dalyką. Mano mama mirė 75 metais ir aš tą savo įmonę turėjau iki 99 metais, kur aš pardaviau. Kaip aš pardaviau tą įmonę, aš sudariau sutartį su Ernst & Young, kuri yra viena iš pasaulinių auditų įmonė, ir jie mane priėmė ir aš turėjau įkurti jų įmonę Lietuvoje tenai. Tai aš visus pirmus darbuotojus priėmiau, aš turėjau įstaigą Kaune, o kitą įstaigą mes turėjom Vilniuje. Tai aš važinėjau tarp Vilniaus ir Kauno. Man Kaunas geriau patiko, už tai yra grynas lietuvių miestas. Ir kadangi tos talų įmonių dukterinės yra per visą Lietuvą paskridę, tai iš Kauno lengviau būdavo pasiekti jos negu iš Vilnių, kur jau šalia yra. Tai iš visų žiūrėti ten, aš galima sakyti, gerą laiką turėjau Danijoje. Negaliu skūstis.
So as I started my own company, I should say that it was quite successful. In 1975, though, my mother died, and in 1999, I sold my own company. And then I entered into an agreement with Ernst & Young, the global auditing company, and they asked me to establish a branch in Lithuania. So I opened the first branch of the company in Kaunas and the second one in Vilnius. But since it was a globally operating large Danish company, it was operating all over Lithuania. So for me, it was easier to commute and to work and to be established in Kaunas, as it is a very Lithuanian-like city. And overall, I should say, since I had this successful path, eventually, I was quite successful to be in Denmark at that time and to have this path.
Aš Kaune buvau lygis. Pabaigoj 2002 metų, Ernst & Young buvo sudaręs sutarties, 2 metus turėjau būti Lietuvoje. Bet kadangi aš 22 metais Arthur Andersen, tai tada kita Amerikos pasaulinį auditų įmonė subankrutavo, Ernst & Young perėmė tą, ir čia buvo biškį keistas perėjimas. Mes buvom 25 žmonės pas Ernst & Young, o Arthur Andersen turėjo 120 žmonių, čia Vilniuje. Bet jie turėjo didelį pastatą ir jie tada reikalavo, kad aš turėčiau persikrausti į Vilnių. Ta sakiau, mano kontraktas pasibaigęs, jau man nereikia būtinai, ir aš atsisakiau ir grįžau į Daniją.
At the end of 2002, it was the end of my 2-year period in Lithuania, and the end of the contract that I had. And around that time, there was another global company, Anderson. What was the exact?
Arthur Andersen.
Arthur Andersen was another company with 25 people who invited me to work for them and to move to Vilnius. But at that time, I told them that I'm not interested in moving to Vilnius, and that was the time when I returned back to Copenhagen, to Denmark.
Can I have a small remark? Because I think that's crucial to have this remark right now, because we started to talk about Ernst & Young. And this is, I think it's a fascinating story because in Lithuania, Ernst & Young is one of the most respectful, not only audit companies, but also legal companies. And they are also advising on legal matters. And I remember myself, when we were finalizing our studies, it was way back ago, Ernst & Young was one of the main employees employing Mykolas Romeris University students in Ernst & Young. So those students, international students who are here right now in this audience, you should remember this guy because he's the founder of the main company in Vilnius in Lithuania who are actually hiring also international students, not only Lithuanian nationals. So you really need to remember the guy, take a photo with him, and then when you will go, to employ yourself, you will say, okay, I know the guy who started this company, and you have no excuse. I'm joking, of course, but this is also the story of resilience and success and and coming back home to Lithuania and doing very meaningful things again in Lithuania. So, of course, now you can finalize. I just wanted to make a remark.
I have no to comment. I am finished with my man. So.
Thank you so much. Ačiū labai, Algirdai. Buvo įdomu ir nuostabu jūsų klausytis. It was a fascinating story. And I find that the story of resilience, not only success, but also resilience, with one eye, like, you have a
a condition which is very challenging for a person, but still you managed to do it easily. It looks like it was done easily. I understand that it was not behind the scenes. Not everything was easy. And I feel that there is also a personal tragedy in your family of your parents. I mean, your mom, she was really lost generation. She needed to have completely different life in free Lithuania. Instead of that, she was working low-scale jobs, very hard jobs, which were way lower than her intelligence and her capabilities. So this is really the tragedy of the war, all wars and crises. People get displaced, people get affected severely, but this displacement, and then sometimes they are losing their future, like your mother did. They lost the life, her life was stolen. Thankfully, you had a life to remember her and to celebrate her, but her life was completely stolen. And I think for all of us here in Lithuania also, we can feel that, that if similar things happen, your life will be stolen. You will be in completely different place, doing completely different things, and not necessarily interesting things, just, for survival. So I think this is the tragedy about that. And Mr. Algirdas, before going to the audience, I hope the microphone is ready. Yes, Darius, the microphone is ready for the questions. So before going to the questions for the audience, and then we will have the generalization of remarks by Danish Cultural Institute, I would like to ask, what about your dad? You told us that your dad was left behind, yes? So what is the destiny of your dad, of your father?
My dad hid in Lithuanians the first time. The name is Tamašauskas, as you know, in Lithuanian is not unusual name, but he could hide it. He get to Kaunas and get employment by the Kaunas community in the statybos, galima sakyt, skyrių. And he worked there, and in 1971 and 72, I didn't remember exactly, he get a permission to come to Denmark because he was gone in the pension at this time, and the Russian let him travel to Denmark. He was coming to Denmark. My mother was there. My mother died in 75, and so he had a reason to meet my wife, and he meet me, but he don't want to stay in Denmark, because in that time there was no support to the people who are coming to Denmark. They have to, so I had to support my dad, and my mother had to support him, and he said, I have my life in Kaunas, I have my friend, I will not stay at your shoulder, and you have to support me also. After 3 months, he went back to Lithuania.
Thank you. You already explained everything in English. And thank you also, Gražvyda, for doing a great job with translating for our international audience. I would like now to move to the audience questions. And if you have a question, just please raise your hand or just turn on your microphone and go ahead to ask. If you need extra microphone, we have it also here ready for you. So are there any questions from the audience? Go ahead, please. So I will introduce you a little bit because, we are here more or less people who know each other. So the question would be from the Supreme Court judge in Lithuania, Algirdas Tamašauskas, very similar, by the way, surname like Tamašauskas. So go ahead, please. The judge, now is your floor.
Aš irgi esu turbūt priversta klausti lietuviškai, kadangi tokia tema pasirinkta šios dienos knygos susijusi ir pristatymas su tuo.
Tai pirmiausia, noriu padėkoti už pasidalinimą prisiminimais. Ir mano klausimas ir labai paprastas ir toks savotiškai mums įdomus. Kaip jūs sugebėjot išsaugoti lietuvių kalbą ir dar su tokia unikalia Marijampolės tartimi? Jūsų patys pirmi žodžiai mums iškart pasakė, iš kokios jūs vietos esate. Ačiū. So thank you. So thank you very much for giving me the floor. And as a judge of the Supreme Court of Lithuania, I am obliged to talk in Lithuanian as well. So what I would like to say is thank you for sharing, by the way, first of all, everything that you have completed and everything that you have to share as a hero of the book. My question is very simple, and at the same time, it's very interesting to find out. How did you manage to preserve the Lithuanian language at a level as good as it is, and also the local dialect from the region where you originate from? It is a very specific region and a very specific dialect, and we could hear it from the very first words as you started talking, that you still have it.
Aš su namie, su mama, žinoma, ji vien tik lietuviškai kalbėdavau. Tenai, bet kaip mirė 75 metais, tai aš lietuviškai nekalbėjau. Lygiai aš atvykau čia į Lietuvą. Žinoma, prieš tai pradžioj 90 metais, tai važinėjau Lietuvoje su tokia grupė, buvo Danija skyrė tenai pašalpą aplink 5 milijonus, tai su inžinierius važinėjom per įmonės, kurie švarę technologiją norėjau jiem padėti, aiškinti. Tai aš važiavau kaip vertėjas. Ir tuomsyk pradėjau vėl atgauti savo lietuvišką kalbą tenai. Ir man rodos, jeigu turi gimęs su kalba, tai nepamirši.
So at that time, at first, when my mother was still alive at home, we were talking only in Lithuanian with my mother. But after she died in 1975, I was not using Lithuanian language anymore. But then in 1990s, early 1990s, I traveled to Lithuania with a group of professionals. We had received a benefit, as he called it, of 5 million to be used with a group of engineers, and we were traveling across different companies in Lithuania. And I was serving in the role of a translator, interpreter. And that was the time when I actually could regain my language competence in the Lithuanian language skills and to revive the language. But in general, I think that once you are born with a language, you can never forget it.
These are very powerful words, the last words about being born with particular language. Yes, of course, Your Excellency.
Just a very brief context also, because we have the students here, and this is in no way to excuse what happened in Denmark with the refugees, because we were also just as much as at a loss as was the world globally, because it was the first time that we were thinking of how to handle big international refugee streams, and the UNH or the United Nations Refugee Convention. It was only adopted in 1951, actually, as a result of the refugees coming from the Soviet bloc. This is what we wanted to do, and this is the first time there is an international regulation of refugee streams, and it's almost forgotten today, because when we think of refugees, we think of Syrians coming here, we think of what's going on in Africa, what has been going on in so many other parts of the world that has generated these refugee streams, and we even had to adopt the protocol in 1967 to also think about that. But this is where it started. So we were also at a loss in Denmark and trying to figure out how to do that. As I'm saying, it's no excuse, because also where does the human empathy go and so forth, which we all try to do in the international system. How do we handle these things when it happened? So just to put it into the context of that, and we have gotten wiser, but it's also all the time becoming more and more complicated. And then also, maybe the Danish authorities should have known, but it doesn't always go from A to B. Denmark never acknowledged the Soviet occupation of the 3 Baltic states. So we should have thought about that also, the refugees, but there is a difference from sitting maybe in the Ministry of Justice in Copenhagen and sitting and trying to handle a refugee camp and trying to figure out how do we handle these people and how do we get them to move on. But that's also why it was so easy for Denmark to acknowledge the independence again in 1951, because we only needed to say we never accepted it. So we just revitalized what we had already done in 1921. And of course, what you were also talking about, this is also about why we have this strong identity together in this region. There was always something there. Your history has been even more turbulent than ours, but we're finding our ways together again today, and it matters a lot. And these stories about how we could help each other after all matters a lot, and it's very important today also.
Thank you so much for this remark. And really, I think Denmark was one of the first to re-recognize Lithuania as independent after 1990s, after Soviet Union collapsed. But also, I think there is also the fact that Danish troops were the first one to patrol in Lithuania with NATO after 2004. So actually, there are many levels of what is happening for the past 30 years, for the past 100 years. And we have been always supporting and together. And what Her Excellency Ambassador just mentioned about the United Nations Convention on Refugee, this is actually legal history. This is already legal history, and we should also be aware that all the international regulation which we have right now on international crimes, on the refugee, on migration, on all of legal international arena, they were actually the result of what happened during the World War II and afterwards. And this is something for us to reflect, because now we still need to do the next steps. Yes, what is next in this field? What we are doing next to make it work? So thank you so much. Are there any questions from the audience? If there are no questions so far, I really will use my privilege of moderator to ask another question from Algirdas, because you mentioned very interesting word. I don't know. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. So I will make a remark and then the floor is yours. Mr. Algirdas actually mentioned one very interesting word. I don't know. Have you all noticed that word? It's marking the place, which is gone now. It's only in the memory. It's not on the map anymore. It's Prussia. You mentioned Prussia. So you should also be aware, especially students who are attending this conference, that territories are named and renamed and occupied, and nations disappear, like Prussians disappeared. Because you see, Algirdas still has the memory that Prussia was there before the war. After the war, it was gone, because now it's Kaliningrad. If you know, like some part of Prussia is now Kaliningrad. It's still ruled by Russia at the moment, but it was created only after the international agreements were made between Stalin and Roosevelt and Churchill. So this is fascinating to understand that there are still people who are still using this language, these titles, because they still remember. But what will be next? What will be next after these people are gone, who really remember? So it's up to us, and especially of the young generation, to understand where they are standing at the moment and how they got there. That, you all and we all in this audience need to understand that in majority it's up to us what will be next. But we need to be very resilient, very active, and never to give up. So this is my remark on Prussia, because I was really surprised to hear this word. And now the question, the floor is for you, Dixie. Yes?
Thank you, Dixie from Copenhagen. I would like to ask two questions. One for Thomas. You mentioned that your father and your grandparents, they couldn't understand why Hertha Rechenberger was expelled to Germany. So why was he expelled to Germany? And for Brian, maybe you could comment on the special case of Bornholm concerning the refugees. That's about it.
You said why she was expelled. Yeah. When in 1941, Hertha, together with her husband and his family, they went to Prussia. We don't know whether they went there on their own or if they were forced to go there. But in a way, that made them German. They were umsiedelt, as you say. And you can see the picture we showed on the map before with her number. That is from the day she was umsiedelt from a Lithuanian citizen to a German citizen. So I suppose that is the real reason why the Danish authorities said you can't have done that move without being a German. And her husband also fought against the Russians in a German uniform. So, and she was also a German-speaking Lithuanian. But she had actually never been to Germany. So she had never been to the country she was expelled to in 1948. And if we are going to recover all the story about her, we have talked to several experts in that matter, and they are saying that she was clearly a Lithuanian citizen when she was expelled from Denmark.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Dixie. When we talk about how the Danish state treated the refugees, especially from 1945 to 1965, we need to keep in mind that it was a real threat. The Soviet Union was a real threat because the small island of Bornholm, which is a small island in the Baltic Sea, which is closer to Sweden and Poland than to Denmark, as far as I know, this island was occupied by the Soviet Union, by Soviet forces until April of 1946. So when all these refugees came to Denmark and when we had to discuss if they were Soviet citizens or what should we do with them, should they be returned home, we need to keep in mind that the Soviet forces was pretty near the Danish capital. So it was a real threat. What should happen if we as a small state, Denmark, provoked the Soviet Union too much.
Thank you so much for the top-notch question. Yes, detailed questions and for your answers. And now I would like to move to our last part of this discussion with the closing remarks of Ine Inemark. She is a regional director for the Baltic States and the Baltic Sea region of the Danish Cultural Institute. And I'm sure you heard a lot of things, and we will be happy to hear your summary or finalization of the event. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Danish country, birthday in March, because 35 years ago, the word established, and it was not the official Denmark establishing it was actually
fundraising campaign made by a Danish newspaper. So it was civil society that gathered funds to establish the institute. But our Minister of Foreign Affairs, he was very active in that the Baltic States should regain their independence. So shadowing in the back, there was a really, really heavy support from the Danish government that we should be here. In the beginning, we had offices in all 3 Baltic capitals. In the moment, we have an office in Riga, but we want to be a resource also for Estonia and Lithuania, and that we can't do without friends. And therefore, it's a really big pleasure for me to have been a part of this event, because when we came to MRU, maybe it also helps to come together with an ambassador, but we have felt really that there was open arms and invitation to cooperate. We work in the Danish Cultural Institute with a very broad sense of culture. And in the next period, we will focus very much on resilience. And I think that also today, resilience have been mentioned a couple of times, because we need this, you could call, cultural resilience in times of tension. And I think that it's really important also that we work together with research institutions like universities. And I can't help to quote the mandate, the founding words of UNESCO, which holds the UN mandate both for education, for science, for culture and communication. It says in the headquarters on the wall, since war begins in the minds of men and women, it is in the minds of men and women that the defense for peace must be constructed. So the overall idea is that we should equip people with enlightenment, with exchange of ideas, with information, with free and critical discussions on truth and what is not truth. So that is like a motor for us to, in these times of tension, to stress what is cultural resilience. And I mean that Lithuanians, together with the other 2 Baltic states, you are champions in cultural resilience. And I think that Algirdas talking about language, the meaning of your mother tongue for your cultural identity, that it's something that equips you with some extra power, which maybe also made you make it. I mean that you survived also mentally the struggles. Yeah, and I would say that I'm sure that this is a beginning of further cooperation. We are already planning more cooperation with Lithuania, and I think that we have so much to learn from each other, and we have also a need to reconfirm this solidarity that Denmark showed to the Baltic states, and now it's an equal footing cooperation, and that means a lot, that we really stick together now. So, and I can say I have only been in the office from February, so this is actually my first bigger event, and I'm so happy that Thomas and Brian, that you accepted to come and share this not very well known chapter of Danish Lithuanian shared memories and history. And I also think that we have today making the bridge from the past and to the present, why it's important to share memories, even though they can be painful, and maybe you are not always proud of the roles that your society had at that time or your government, but discussing it and having this free conversation and dialogue makes us learn and bring us forward. And also thank you, Algirdas, for taking your time to come here. And also a huge thank you to Dovil. I think that you have made a marvelous job as a moderator of this session. Yes, and also thanks to the Danish Embassy. It has been a wonderful cooperation. And we have a few
Yes. Yeah. So, okay.
Oh, the best part of moderating.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's another. Yes, it's another close.
Yeah.
So thank you, all of you. Yes.
Thank you so much for this kind summary, and we can now applaud ourselves and resume the recording and to move to the more informal parts. Thank you so much for being with us and for your presence as well. Thank you.